Hi there, I'm Elizabeth Bertrand and I'm the founder of dolcevia.com. We explore Italy a little differently, focusing on what's actually happening across the country, from cultural events and exhibitions to festival openings, and the moments that don't always make it into the guidebooks. Every month, we bring you a curated overview of what's worth knowing, and more importantly, what's worth showing up for. And for that, I'm joined by two rather unique co-hosts. They're powered by artificial intelligence, obsessively up-to-date, and remarkably good at spotting exactly what matters. Together, they'll walk you through the month, so let's get into it.
So, picture this. You are standing right in the middle of Piazza del Duomo in Florence.
Okay, setting the scene.
Yeah, it's a brisk Sunday morning, and towering above you is that iconic, the red tiled dome of the cathedral.
The Brunelleschi dome.
Exactly. But right in front of the cathedral door sits this massive, intricately carved wooden cart. It looks like it was pulled straight out of the 16th century.
Because it basically was.
Right. It's covered in crests. There are people walking around in full Renaissance armor. And it's been dragged into the square by a team of highly decorated oxen.
Which is quite the visual.
It is. And then suddenly you hear the sharp mechanical whir. You look up, and shooting out from the dark nave of the church, speeding down this iron wire suspended right over the crowd, is a mechanical dove.
Oh, the Columbina.
Yes. It slams directly into the wooden cart. And then the entire cart just erupts. I mean, it becomes this deafening, towering inferno of fireworks-colored smoke, pinwheels. The crowd goes completely wild.
Oh, yeah.
And the crazy thing is, this isn't a movie set. It's not a theme park. This is just a Sunday morning in Italy.
Well, I mean, religious explosions, I feel like that is a very important distinction to make right at the top.
Exactly. Religious explosions. And honestly, that explosion is kind of the perfect metaphor for what we are doing on the deep dive today.
Because we're blowing up assumptions.
Basically, yeah. Because normally when you talk about planning a trip to Italy, people treat it like this binary choice.
Yes, no, absolutely. It's either the dead of winter, where you have the Uffizi Gallery totally to yourself, but you're freezing your toes off on the cobblestones.
Right.
Or it's peak July,
yeah.
Which is, that over-filtered, aggressively chaotic summer season.
Yeah.
Wall-to-wall crowds on the Amalfi Coast, unrelenting heat.
And just a very specific kind of mass tourism. But today, we are completely throwing out that binary. We are taking all our sources, the travel compendiums, the cultural calendars, and we're diving deep into the travel landscape of April 2026.
Because April is really the ultimate insider timing.
Yes. It is the anticipation season. Imagine the entire country of Italy just stretching its arms after a long, damp winter.
Yeah, the hills are just starting to turn green again.
Exactly. The outdoor markets are suddenly spilling back into the streets, and almost overnight, there's this palpable pulse returning to every single piazza.
It is a really profound shift. I mean, the tourism industry calls it the shoulder season, but I've always felt that term is just too clinical.
Yeah, it doesn't capture the vibe.
Right, because what's actually happening climatologically is this fascinating kind of messy transition. If you look at the weather data for northern Italy, so Milan, Venice, Bologna, April, is incredibly changeable.
Very up and down.
Totally. You're dealing with temperatures hovering between 40 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. It is damp. You might see rain 8 or 9 days out of the month.
So you're absolutely packing an umbrella for Venice. You aren't taking a gondola ride in a T-shirt.
No, you certainly aren't. But as you move south down the peninsula, the thermal dynamics completely change.
You're right, getting warmer.
Exactly. Central Italy, places like Rome and Florence, offer a much more forgiving 50 to 65 degrees. You'll have these brilliant, crisp afternoons where eating lunch outside in a sun-drenched square is just perfect.
Sounds amazing.
It is, but then it's followed by evenings where you absolutely need a wool coat. And by the time you reach Sicily and Puglia in the south, you're hitting highs of 70.
Which sounds totally idyllic. But let me ask the obvious question here, because I know people are going to look at 70 degrees in Sicily and immediately think of packing a swimsuit.
Oh, and that would be a huge mistake.
Really? No swimming?
No swimming. This is where the fizzle of the Mediterranean Sea come into play. The concept is thermal inertia. Water just takes vastly longer to heat up than air.
Ah, right. Because of the winter.
Exactly.
All right.
After months of winter, the sea in April is still retaining all the cold of January and February. So while the air temperature on the beach in Palermo might feel lovely, the water itself is bracingly, painfully cold.
Oh, wow. So it's strictly a visual amenity in April.
Strictly visual, not a swimming pool.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. If I am planning a vacation and you're telling me I have to dodge rainstorms in Milan, I have to carry a coat to dinner in Rome, and I can't even swim in the ocean in Sicily.
Right.
Why in the world are we dedicating an entire deep dive to this specific month? Like, why wouldn't I just wait for the reliability of June?
Because reliability in travel often equates to a totally sanitized experience. I mean, what's fascinating here is how the unpredictability of April is exactly what forces you to experience the country the way the locals do.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Think about the mechanics of a sudden spring shower in Rome. When the sky just opens up at 2 p.m., you don't stay out and power through it like a tourist on a strict itinerary.
Yeah, you can't just keep marching to the Colosseum.
No, you are forced to adapt. You duck into a crowded, warm cafe. You stand shoulder to shoulder at the zinc bar with actual Romans who are also just escaping the rain. You order an espresso, you listen to the chatter, and you just watch the rain wash the cobblestones. You are suddenly participating in the daily rhythm of the city, rather than just observing it from a tour bus.
I love that framing. So June brings the heat and the rigid tourist menus, but April brings authenticity.
Exactly. The cities are waking up, but they're waking up for themselves, not for the international crowds.
And the weather forces you into that serendipity. I love that. And, that awakening isn't a quiet, gentle thing. Like we mentioned at the start with our exploding cart in Florence, the country literally wakes up with a bang.
Yes, it really does.
Because Easter in Italy isn't just a holiday. It is high stakes, emotional, and intensely visual theater. Italy doesn't do subtle when it comes to Easter.
It really doesn't. It is a massive cultural pillar. In 2026, Easter Sunday falls on April 5th, and the preceding week, Settimana Santa, Holy Week, is this immersive countrywide event.
Okay, let's go back to Florence and the Scoppio del Carro, the explosion of the cart. I need to understand the mechanics and the history of this, because the idea of the city government authorizing a massive explosion directly in front of a priceless Renaissance cathedral is just wild to me.
Yeah, it speaks to how deeply ingrained this tradition is. The cart itself, known locally as the Brindolone, is not just a prop. It's a 350-year-old towering wooden structure.
Wow, 350 years old.
Yeah, and the lore behind why they blow it up is one of the most fascinating intersections of history, religion, and civic pride in all of Europe. It traces all the way back to the First Crusade, around the year 1099.
Wait, really? We're going back almost 1,000 years to explain a fireworks display.
We have to. According to Florentine history, a local captain named Pazzino de Pazzi was the very first man to scale the walls of Jerusalem during the siege.
Okay.
As a reward for his valor, he wasn't given gold. He was given 3 jagged stone splinters, supposedly taken directly from the Holy Sepulchre.
Which is the tomb of Christ. I mean, that is an unimaginably powerful relic to bring back to a medieval city.
Precisely. Pazzino brings these stones back to Florence. They are still preserved today, actually, in the Church of Santi Apostoli.
Oh, you can still see them.
You can. Now, fast forward to Easter Sunday. The ritual of the Holy Fire involves taking those exact 3 stones, which are essentially flint, and striking them together to create a spark.
Okay.
That spark, born from relics of the Crusades, is used to light coals.
And those coals light the mechanical dove.
Yes, the columbina. The holy fire is transferred to the high altar of the Duomo, and at exactly 11 a.m., the Archbishop of Florence uses that fire to ignite the fuse of the rocket, shaped like a dove.
I just can't get over the logistics of this. So the wire it travels on is strung all the way down the massive nave of the cathedral.
Right, all the way down the aisle, out the main doors, and connects directly to the cart out in the square.
The tension in that room must be suffocating. What if the rocket gets stuck halfway down the aisle?
Well, that is the crux of the entire event. The tension isn't just about whether the fireworks will look pretty. It's an incredibly deep-seated agricultural superstition.
Ah, it's tied to the harvest.
Yes. The dove has to hit the cart, ignite the payload, and then, crucially, the rocket thrust has to propel the dove all the way back up the wire to the altar.
Wait, it has to go back?
It has to make the return trip. If it fails, Florentine tradition dictates that the harvest will fail.
So you have thousands of people, including farmers from the surrounding Tuscan countryside, holding their breath, watching a medieval rocket, genuinely believing the economic fate of their year rests on this piece of string.
Exactly. It's spectacular. But while Florence is doing that, Rome is hosting what we could call the global broadcast of Easter.
Right, the Vatican,
Yeah.
St. Peter's Basilica.
The Pope's Easter Mass and the Urbi et Orbi blessing. It is extraordinary to witness, but we really have to inject some stark reality here for anyone planning to go.
Yeah, let's talk about the crowds.
The logistics of Rome during Holy Week are staggering. You cannot just show up to St. Peter's Square on April 5th and expect to casually stroll in.
Right, this is the one moment in April where the insider timing actually mirrors the absolute peak chaos of midsummer. Rome is flooded.
Flooded. The capacity is tightly controlled. You have to submit formal requests to the prefecture of the pontifical household months in advance, like by mid-March at the absolute latest for 2026.
Wow, okay, good to know.
And even the Good Friday Stations of the Cross at the Colosseum, which happens 2 days prior, draws tens of thousands of people.
I've seen photos of that. It looks amazing.
It's a profoundly solemn image, the ancient amphitheater lit by torches, the Pope presiding over the crowd in the dark. But the sheer density of humanity requires meticulous planning.
Yeah, but if Rome is this massive, polished, global broadcast, then Sicily is like the intense, gritty, avant-garde indie film of Easter.
Oh, that's a perfect way to put it.
The vibe couldn't be more different down there.
The contrast is jarring. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Sicilian Holy Week traditions operate on an entirely different emotional frequency. They are deeply rooted in the island's history of Spanish domination from the 16th and 17th centuries.
I want to focus on the procession of the mysteries in the towns of Trapani and Arras because the imagery of this is haunting.
Very haunting.
We're talking about heavy, life-sized wooden sculptures depicting the Passion of Christ carried through the streets. But it's not just the statues that catch your eye, it's the people carrying them.
Right, the confraternities. These are local brotherhoods, and during the procession, they wear traditional robes and pointed hoods that completely cover their faces,
Leaving only small slits for the eyes, which for an American traveler is a visual that carries a very different, very dark modern connotation.
Oh, absolutely.
But the history here has absolutely nothing to do with that, right?
Nothing at all. The hoods are a medieval tradition of penitence. The idea was that true charity and true penance should be anonymous.
So you shouldn't get social credit for your devotion?
Exactly. By covering the face, the individual ego is erased, and they simply become a vessel for the community's grief.
Right.
And that physical penance is extreme. These wooden statues, called the Mystera, weigh hundreds of pounds.
And they carry them for how long?
The procession in Trapani lasts for 24 uninterrupted hours.
24 hours?
Yes, from Friday afternoon until Saturday afternoon. They carry these massive wooden platforms through the narrow, winding streets, constantly shifting the weight onto their shoulders.
That is insane.
And they move with a specific rhythmic sway called the anacotta to the sound of mournful brass bands. The physical exhaustion is the point. It is a visceral communal endurance test.
Wow. And then just a few towns over in San Fratello, you have the Festa de Giude, which completely flips the color palette.
It really does.
Instead of solemn dark robes, the participants march through the streets in blazing, vibrant red and yellow costumes that almost look like medieval jesters.
It's a fascinating historical quirk. The Giude, which translates to the Jews, though the historical context is incredibly convoluted and tied to ancient local interpretations of the Passion, are essentially acting out the role of the antagonist.
Oh, interesting. So they're the bad guys.
Right. They blow loud, dissonant trumpets, they run through the streets, and they actively try to disrupt the solemnity of the traditional processions. It introduces this element of chaos and noise that is so uniquely Sicilian.
Okay, I have to step in here. Because if I'm an ambitious traveler and I'm looking to shake off the winter blues and experience the beauty of spring, everything you just described, 24-hour endurance marches, heavy wooden statues, hooded penitents, massive Vatican crowds, it all feels incredibly heavy.
It is heavy.
Where is the joy? Like, where is the spring energy?
Well, the joy arrives on Monday. The physiological shift that happens in Italy after Holy Week is profound. You have an entire culture that has just spent weeks observing Lent.
Right. Periods of fasting, dietary restriction.
And solemn reflection, culminating in the intense emotional peak of Easter Sunday. But when you wake up the next morning on Easter Monday, the tension breaks. The entire country collectively decides it is time to exhale, to go outside, and to eat.
Which brings us to the culinary reawakening of Italy. Yeah. And honestly, this might be the most vital part of understanding April.
I would agree.
There is a saying that if a vegetable grows in spring in Italy, there is a festival dedicated to it. And if there isn't, an Italian grandmother is currently inventing one.
It is the season of the sagre. A sagra is a highly localized, fiercely proud food festival dedicated to whatever the earth is yielding in that exact micro-region.
And because of Italy's diverse geography, April is just an explosion of produce.
Absolutely.
I want to start in Rome, because to me, April in Rome smells like hot oil and artichokes.
Ah, yes. The Carsuvi alla Judia.
Yes, the Jewish-style artichokes. For those who haven't experienced this, it is a culinary revelation. But I want to know why this specific dish is so intrinsically tied to Rome in the spring.
It's a brilliant example of how history dictates cuisine. The dish originated in the Roman Jewish ghetto, which was established in the 16th century.
Okay.
The residents of the ghetto were subjected to intense poverty and severe restrictions on what they could trade or eat. They had to rely on whatever was cheap, local, and abundant.
And in the spring, that meant artichokes.
Specifically, the Cimarroli or Romanesco artichokes from the coastal regions of Lazio. These specific artichokes are large, round, and crucially, they lack the sharp internal chokes and exterior spikes of other varieties.
So they took this tough, humble vegetable and they applied the ultimate culinary problem solver, deep frying.
Exactly. But it's not just a simple fry. The preparation is meticulous. The artichokes are trimmed down, gently beaten against a hard surface to open the leaves like a blooming flower, and then they are fried twice in olive oil.
Ooh, a double fry. That's the secret.
Yes. The first fry cooks the dense heart until it's tender like a potato. The second fry, done at a higher heat, crisps the outer leaves until they shatter like potato chips.
And you can only get this in the spring, like truly.
Well, if you go to a respectable Roman trattoria in October and ask for a carciofi alla Judia, the waiter will refuse to serve you.
They'll just say no.
They will. The true Romanesco artichokes are harvested between February and April. Eating them outside of that window means eating a subpar, imported imitation, which is practically a sin in Rome.
That reverence for hyperseasonality is amazing. And it's not just artichokes. If we go north to the Veneto region up near the Dolomites, the obsession shifts entirely to something else, white asparagus from Bassano del Grappa.
Yes, the Asparago Bianco di Bassano. This isn't just a vegetable. It holds a protected designation of origin status.
Like champagne.
Exactly. The cultivation process is incredibly labor-intensive, which is why they are so celebrated in April.
I've always wondered about this. How do they get them to stay completely white? Is it a different species of plant?
No, it's actually a manipulation of light. The farmers painstakingly pile the sandy, mineral-rich soil of the Brenta riverbed high over the growing shoots.
So they bury them.
The asparagus grows entirely underground, in complete darkness. Because sunlight never touches the stalk, the plant never produces chlorophyll. No photosynthesis occurs, so it never turns green.
That is wild. They are literally starving the plant of light to change the flavor.
Precisely. And it results in a stalk that is thicker, significantly more tender, and possesses this delicate, bittersweet flavor profile that is completely different from green asparagus.
Oh, I have to try that.
In April, the town of Bassano hosts weeks of events where these white spears are paired with local olive oil, boiled eggs, and the sharp local Vespaiolo wine.
Which brings us perfectly to how Italians actually consume all this food in April. Because on Easter Monday, they don't just stay in restaurants.
No, Easter Monday is called Paschetta, which literally translates to Little Easter, and it triggers a national migration.
The tradition is simple, right? You leave the city walls, you pack the car, you pack the coolers, and you head to the countryside, the mountains, or the beaches for elaborate day-long picnics and barbecues.
That's the tradition.
But they aren't grilling hamburgers. The regional menus for Paschetta are hyper-specific, and some of them are pretty hardcore.
They lean heavily into the tradition of cucina povera, the poor man's cooking, where absolutely nothing of an animal was wasted.
Right, the peasant food traditions.
For example, if you are picnicking in the Samnite area of Campania, south of Naples, you will likely smell a mugliatielle roasting on the fire.
And what exactly is an mugliatielle?
It is a small roll made entirely of lamb entrails.
Oh, okay.
Specifically the intestines, seasoned with garlic, parsley, and sometimes pecorino cheese, wrapped up tightly and grilled until crispy.
Wow. That is a serious commitment to nose-to-tail eating. I can see why a modern tourist might hesitate, but you kind of have to respect the historical logic there.
You really do.
Easter brings the sacrifice of the lamb for the Sunday roast. Come Monday, you have all the offal left over. You don't throw it away. You turn it into a delicacy for the barbecue.
Exactly. The economy of the pasture dictates the menu of the holiday. Or if you travel east to the rugged region of Abruzzo, say around Lake Sinuso, the smoke rising from the picnic areas comes from arrosticini.
Skewered meat.
But not just any meat. It must be castrated sheep meat, cut into perfectly uniform cubes, alternated with small pieces of sheep fat.
Sounds delicious, honestly.
It is. And they are grilled on very specific, narrow charcoal grills called canaline, which are designed so that only the meat is over the coals, protecting the wooden skewers from burning.
Oh, that's clever.
The fat melts over the coals, creating a thick smoke that coats the meat. It is a pastoral masterpiece.
It sounds incredible. And just to show how Italy constantly balances these ancient, rugged traditions with modern quirks, Paschetta in 2026 actually coincides with a very recent internet-driven holiday carbonara day.
Yes, April 6th.
So you have families in the mountains grilling ancient sheep intestines over narrow coals, while down in Rome, chefs are hosting international masterclasses on the exact ratio of guanciale fat to egg yolk needed to emulsify the perfect modern carbonara.
It perfectly encapsulates the Italian culinary timeline, doesn't it?
It really does.
But this intense, almost religious adherence to the calendar in April isn't limited to what comes out of the ground. They apply that exact same reverence to what comes out of their history books.
Which is a perfect segue, because in April, Italy doesn't just remember its past, it literally dresses up and reenacts it in the streets. I want to talk about the biggest, most audacious birthday party on the planet. Rome turning 2,778 years old.
Natale di Roma, the birthday of the eternal city.
The audacity to put a specific date on the founding of a sprawling ancient empire is so Roman to me. April 21st, 753 BC.
Well, it is based on the calculations of a 1st century BC scholar named Varro.
Okay, so it's ancient math.
Right. He used complex astrological alignments and local mythology regarding Romulus and Remus to pinpoint the exact day Romulus purportedly plowed the sacred boundary line around the Palatine Hill.
But is it historically accurate?
Whether it is historically accurate is beside the point. Civically and culturally, it is undeniable truth to a Roman.
And how do you celebrate a 2,778th birthday? You don't just bake a cake. The city goes completely all out. From April 18th to the 21st, they construct a massive, functional, historical village at the Circus Maximus.
Yes, the Gruppo Storico Romano, which is a historical reenactment society that takes their job incredibly seriously, sets up authentic Roman military encampments.
Like with tents and armor.
Tents, armor, the works.
Mm-hmm.
There are educational workshops on ancient coinage, medicine, and cuisine. And yes, they host highly choreographed gladiator combats on the grass where the chariots used to race.
Let me push back here for a second, because when I hear historical reenactors doing gladiator fights, my mind immediately goes to a cheesy tourist trap.
Sure.
Does the average Roman actually care about this, or is it just a spectacle to keep the Americans and the British entertained?
It's a very fair skepticism, but the reality is quite the opposite. Natale di Roma is deeply cherished by the locals. You will see multi-generational Roman families out strolling through the Circus Maximus.
Oh, really? So it's for them?
Absolutely. They use the holiday as an excuse to gather in Trastevere and eat massive plates of amatriciana. The mythology of the she-wolf and the founding of the empire is baked into their DNA. It's an assertion of their continuous identity.
And the most profound assertion of that identity, the one thing that truly bridges the ancient world and the modern day, happens at the Pantheon. We have to talk about the oculus.
The astronomical miracle. It is one of the most stunning feats of ancient engineering on Earth.
Walk us through the mechanics of this, because a lot of people know the Pantheon has a giant hole in the roof, the oculus, but what specifically happens on April 21st?
To understand this, you have to understand the architect, Agrippa, and later the Emperor Hadrian, who rebuilt it. The Pantheon wasn't just a temple. It was a cosmic clock and a massive piece of imperial propaganda.
Okay.
The dome represents the vault of the heavens. On April 21st, the birthday of Rome, the sun reaches a very specific declination in the sky. At exactly solar noon on that day, the light passes through the oculus and forms a perfect, brilliant circle of illumination.
And it doesn't just hit the floor, right?
No. The light sweeps down the coffered ceiling and perfectly frames the massive bronze entrance doors.
So if you were the Roman emperor in antiquity.
Exactly. The emperor would deliberately time his arrival to the temple on the city's birthday. As he stood in the doorway, he would be instantly and perfectly bathed in a divine spotlight, descending directly from the heavens.
That's just incredible.
It was an orchestrated architectural miracle designed to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the emperor ruled by celestial mandate.
And 2,000 years later, the math still works perfectly. The Earth is still tilting on the exact same axis, the concrete dome hasn't moved an inch, and that beam of light still hits the door on April 21st. It gives me chills just thinking about it.
It is the ultimate testament to Roman permanence. But Rome isn't the only city using the April calendar to celebrate its identity. Up in Venice, April 25th holds profound dual significance.
Ah, right. It's St. Mark's Day, honoring the patron saint of Venice.
Yes, the Festa di San Marco. And there's a deeply romantic local tradition tied to this day. Venetian men traditionally present a single red rose, known as a boccolo, or rosebud, to the women they love. Wives, mothers, daughters. The city is flooded with red roses.
Which is incredibly poetic. But the date itself, April 25th, is also a massive national holiday for all of Italy, isn't it?
It is. It's Liberation Day, Festa della Liberazione. It marks the day in 1945 when the National Liberation Committee of Upper Italy officially proclaimed the insurgency that led to the fall of the fascist regime and the end of the Nazi occupation.
So you have this incredible juxtaposition in Venice. You have the ancient romance of the red rose for St. Mark occurring against the backdrop of modern military parades, marching bands, and solemn ceremonies honoring the partisans who died in World War II.
It's the layered complexity of Italy. Ancient history, romantic lore, and raw modern history, all occupying the exact same piazza on the exact same afternoon.
It's beautiful. But I want to pivot back to something we talked about at the very beginning, the weather.
Ah, the unpredictable April weather.
Right. Because we're talking about standing outside the Pantheon, watching gladiator fights at the Circus Maximus, and carrying roses through the streets of Venice. What happens when that notorious April unpredictability strikes?
When it rains.
Yeah, the sky turns slate gray, the temperature drops, and a torrential downpour washes out the gladiator encampment.
That is when you realize Italy has the greatest indoor backup plan in the history of civilization.
The culture season. Because while the ancient sites and the food festivals are waking up outside, the world-class museums are launching their massive spring exhibitions inside.
Exactly.
If you hit a rainy day in April, you aren't trapped in your hotel room. You are absolutely spoiled for choice.
April 2026 is boasting a staggering array of exhibitions across the country. Even the museums wake up in April, and they don't do small.
Let's talk about that. I want to focus deeply on two specific exhibits that perfectly illustrate the tension and the dialogue of Italian art. Let's start in Rome. At the Musei Capitolini, there's an exhibit called Greece in Rome, and I'm fascinated by the psychology behind this.
It is a brilliant curation. Travelers should note it ends early in the month, on April 12th, but they run excellent free English tours on Sunday afternoons.
Oh, okay, good tip.
The exhibit features over 150 artworks, and the thesis is an exploration of how Rome built its cultural identity, not by originating it, but by systematically importing, buying, and copying Greek art.
It's the ultimate cultural on a reverse card.
Right.
Rome uses its brutal military superiority to conquer the Greek peninsula. They are the victors.
Right.
But the Roman generals bring back these exquisite Hellenistic statues and pottery as loot, and the Roman elites look at them and realize, oh, they are much more sophisticated than we are.
That realization completely altered Roman society. The Roman poet Horace famously summarized it with the line, Graecia capta ferum victorum sipit. Captive Greece took captive her fierce conqueror.
So the conquered enslaved the conqueror through sheer aesthetic superiority. That is wild.
Precisely. Roman aristocrats became obsessed. They imported Greek sculptors. They demanded exact copies of famous Greek bronzes to be carved in marble for their villas. And they entirely adopted the Greek pantheon of gods.
Which you can see in the exhibit.
Yes, this exhibit at the Capitolini allows you to see that synthesis happening in real time. You see the rougher, pragmatic Roman stylistic tendencies colliding with the idealized mathematical perfection of Greek form. It is a deep dive into ancient globalization and cultural appropriation.
It proves that Roman culture was always a hybrid. Now, if we take a high-speed train up to Florence to escape the rain, there's another exhibit that creates a completely different kind of aesthetic collision.
Rothko of Firenze at the Palazzo Strozzi.
Exactly. When people think of Florence, they think of the Renaissance. Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Botticelli. Perfect figurative representation.
Of course.
And yet, the marquee exhibit for spring 2026 is Mark Rothko, the mid-20th century American abstract expressionist, famous for his massive canvases of floating, blurry blocks of pure color.
Quite the contrast.
Why put Rothko in Florence? Is the city trying to rebrand itself so it doesn't just feel like a dusty museum of the 15th century?
It isn't a rebrand. It is a forced dialogue. Think about the physical space of the Palazzo Strozzi. It is a massive, imposing, rusticated stone fortress of a building, a masterpiece of rigid Renaissance geometry and proportion.
Right.
When you walk into those ancient echoing rooms and you are suddenly confronted by a giant glowing canvas of pulsating red and black by Rothko, the contrast is explosive.
The Renaissance architecture demands structure and logic, and the Rothko painting demands pure, unstructured, emotional surrender.
Exactly. Placing modern abstraction inside a 15th century palazzo elevates both. The ancient stone makes the modern canvas look more vibrant and radical, while the modern art forces you to notice the heavy historical weight of the architecture surrounding it.
That makes total sense.
It proves that Italy isn't just a tomb for old art. It is a living, breathing venue that constantly challenges how we view aesthetics.
And speaking of challenging how we view aesthetics, there is one city in Italy that doesn't just put modern art in an old building. In April, this city entirely sheds its historical skin to become the absolute, undisputed epicenter of the modern world.
We are moving to Milan.
Yes, because for 1 week in April, Milan becomes the best designed, most avant-garde city on planet Earth.
We are talking about the Salone del Mobile, the Milan Furniture Fair. In 2026, it runs from April 21st to the 26th.
Calling it a furniture fair feels like calling the Vatican a local church. It is a global phenomenon.
The scale is difficult to comprehend. The main event happens at the Row Fairgrounds, which cover over 750,000 square meters. It dictates the global trends for interior design, architecture, and material science for the next decade.
And what's interesting for 2026 is that they are actively shifting focus. They aren't just showing mass-produced sofas.
No, they are launching an initiative called Salone Raritas. It is curated by an expert named Annalisa Rosso. But more importantly, the physical space is designed by Forma Fantasma, which is one of the most intellectually rigorous design studios working today.
How does Forma Fantasma design a space for rare furniture?
They treat the pavilion like a glowing lantern. Salone Raritas is dedicated entirely to limited edition high-end collectible design, pieces that blur the line between functional furniture and fine art sculpture.
Oh, wow.
Forma Fantasma has created a modular, sustainable environment that uses complex lighting to isolate and elevate these rare pieces, forcing the viewer to engage with the materiality and the craftsmanship of a single chair or a table as if it were a priceless artifact.
It sounds incredibly chic, incredibly cerebral, and honestly a little intimidating. Like if I'm just a traveler who appreciates good design, but I'm not a billionaire architect or an international buyer, am I just going to be locked out of this?
If the event was only at the fairgrounds, perhaps?
Mm-hmm.
But the true genius of Milan Design Week is what happens outside the fairgrounds. It's called the Fiera Salone.
The outside of the salon.
Yes. The Fiera Salone democratizes the entire event. The design world literally spills out and takes over the entire city of Milan. Districts like Brera, Zona Tortona, and the 5V neighborhood become an open-air laboratory.
Describe what it feels like to walk through the Fiera Salone, because I've heard it is pure chic chaos.
Imagine walking down a quiet, cobbled street in the Brera district. You see heavy wooden doors to a 16th century palazzo that are usually locked tight to the public.
Right.
During Fiera Salone, those doors are thrown open. You walk into a hidden, overgrown interior courtyard, and smack in the middle of this ancient, decaying elegance, a Japanese design firm has installed a massive, glowing, inflatable pavilion made of recycled ocean plastics.
That sounds amazing.
You can walk inside it, interact with the designers, and grab a cocktail, and then you walk next door to an abandoned warehouse, and a Dutch lighting company has turned the space into a laser labyrinth.
So the city itself becomes the canvas.
It does. It proves that Milan is fearlessly forward-looking. While Rome and Florence are fiercely protecting their past, Milan, in April, is aggressively inventing the future. Anyone can wander the streets, pop into these incredible installations, and be inspired.
It is the ultimate insider experience. Now, we've covered the massive anchor events, Easter, the historic birthdays, the design week, but I want to close our journey across the calendar by looking at the cracks in between those major events.
The wild cards.
Exactly. Because the true magic of April in Italy is that you don't always need a meticulously planned itinerary. Italy doesn't always announce its best events with a global press release. Sometimes you just stumble into them.
Right, you just have to be there.
I want to throw a few eclectic events at you to show just how weird and wonderful the April calendar is. Let's start on the very first weekend, April 4th and 5th, in the Tuscan city of Arezzo.
The Arezzo Antique Market. Fiera Antiquaria.
Right. But this isn't like a few folding tables in a dusty hall. This market completely consumes the historic center of the city, radiating out from the Piazza Grande.
It is the oldest and largest antique market in Italy, with over 500 exhibitors. You have vendors selling genuine Renaissance tapestries, 18th century ceramics, vintage typewriters, and mid-century chandeliers.
Sounds like a whole thing.
It is. The entire city turns into a chaotic, thrilling treasure hunt set against the backdrop of medieval towers and Romanesque churches.
It's a collector's dream. But let's say antiques aren't your thing and you're down in Rome between April 9th and the 12th. You might be walking near the massive Fiera di Roma exhibition center, and suddenly you are surrounded by thousands of people dressed as Spider-Man, obscure anime characters, and medieval fantasy warrior.
You've stumbled into Romix.
Yes, a massive international festival for comics, animation, and gaming. It completely shatters the stereotype that Rome is only about marble statues and Catholic history.
It really does.
You have incredibly elaborate cosplay contests, international manga artists doing live drawings, and massive gaming tournaments. It is a vibrant, youthful subculture thriving right alongside the ancient ruins.
And if you travel up to the Veneto region, to the romantic city of Verona, between April 12th and 15th, you hit a completely different kind of subculture. Vinitaly.
Now, Vinitaly is technically a B2B event, right? A trade show for the global wine industry to buy and sell.
Primarily, yes. The main fairgrounds are focused on industry professionals. However, the organizers realized that thousands of wine lovers were coming to the city anyway, so they created Vinitaly in the city.
Which is brilliant.
It is. They take the energy at the trade show and pump it directly into the historic center of Verona. They set up high-end tasting pavilions in the piazzas.
So you can just walk around and taste.
You can walk through the streets where Shakespeare set Romeo and Juliet, holding a glass of world-class Amarone or Franciacorta, listening to live jazz, and participating in public masterclasses. It turns the entire city into a celebration of Italian viticulture.
And finally, because we need to balance the wine and the cosplay with a bit of sheer botanical poetry, I want to mention an event taking place just outside Turin at the Giardini della Reggia di Venaria.
The Royal Gardens.
Yes. From late March through early April, they host an event simply called Evening Under the Cherry Blossoms. You walk through these manicured regal gardens at dusk, entirely surrounded by blooming pink sakura trees, while musicians play classical instruments.
It offers a profound meditative contrast to the sensory overload of the rest of the country, and it connects perfectly to the broader botanical celebrations that sweep the country in spring, like the Flower Festival in Alassio down on the Ligurian coast.
Oh, the Flower Festival.
Yes. Alassio uses the spring bloom to host a massive event dedicated not just to flowers, but to sustainability, botanical arts, and the specific floral heritage of the Italian Riviera.
That sounds lovely.
The town is flooded with botanical installations, workshops on sustainable gardening, and local Ligurian food markets.
And if we look to the very end of April, bridging into May, you have things like the Brixen Waterlight Festival up in South Tyrol. They take the historic architecture and the waterways of this alpine town and transform them with massive, sustainable light art installations at night.
It highlights the incredible geographic and cultural diversity of the country.
It really does. I mean, look at the breadth of what we've just discussed. We have a 2,778-year-old Roman birthday party with gladiators, hooded medieval endurance marches in Sicily, glowing futuristic furniture in Milan, cosplay conventions in Rome, wine parties in Verona, and illuminated alpine rivers in Brixen.
It's a lot.
It feels like Italy has a massive, fragmented, split personality in April.
But that is the ultimate takeaway. It is not a split personality. This is the true cohesive identity of Italy. The country refuses to be reduced to a simple postcard or a single palatable stereotype for tourists.
Right.
It fiercely reveres its ancient history, but it's also messy, innovative, deeply weird, and vividly alive in the present moment. These wildcard events, the food festivals, the design fairs, they prove that Italian culture isn't a museum exhibit trapped in amber.
It's constantly evolving.
Exactly. It is a living, breathing, evolving ecosystem that embraces the sacred, the profane, the ancient, and the futuristic all at the exact same time.
And that vibrant, living ecosystem is exactly why we spent the last hour breaking down this specific month, which brings us to our final thought.
If we synthesize everything we've explored today, the argument for April is undeniable. It represents the absolute sweet spot of travel.
Let's review the practical reality. The weather is transitioning. It forces you to engage with the elements, to duck into cafes, to adapt, but it spares you from the oppressive, suffocating heat of July.
The food is hyper-seasonal. It is the precise moment when the agricultural calendar explodes with freshness. The artichokes, the white asparagus, the strawberries, and you get to taste the land waking up.
The cultural calendar is packed to the absolute brim. You can bounce from Renaissance art to mid-century Rothko, from medieval Easter spectacles to the cutting edge of global design in Milan.
And most importantly, while specific flashpoints like the Vatican or the Rome Fairgrounds will draw immense focused crowds, the general overwhelming horde of mass summer tourism has not yet descended upon the country as a whole.
April in Italy isn't loud yet, and that's exactly why you should be here.
I want to leave you with a final framing to mull over. Think about Italy's famous monuments, its grand piazzas, and its sweeping ancient palazzos.
Okay.
If those spaces are a grand stage, then the peak summer months of July and August are the main performance, put on specifically for a global ticket-buying audience. The menus are translated, the events are packaged, and the locals often flee the centers.
That makes sense.
But April is the dress rehearsal. It is the fleeting window of time when the actors are out in the streets, performing the ancient rituals, eating the seasonal food, and living their complex, chaotic culture entirely for themselves.
Oh, I love that analogy.
By choosing to travel in April, you aren't just buying a ticket to be a passive audience member. You are slipping backstage. And you have to ask yourself, how does experiencing a culture when it thinks nobody is watching fundamentally change your relationship with the places you travel?
Are you traveling to see the polished performance? Or are you traveling to see the reality? The unpredictable, ancient, delicious, deeply human reality. I know which one I want. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the obvious travel advice, keep digging into the history, and honestly, you might want to open a new tab and start looking at flights for next spring. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.